on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
8:36 now, a busy, loaded morning, as every morning is these days here, with the events of the world and our nation and our town sort of overwhelming each of us. But we sort through it for you and hopefully get you where you need to go every morning, more informed and entertained. It's Larry O'Connor, and this Thursday morning we're joined by Mercedes Schlepp, fresh from Mar-a-Lago, and the entire transition party it looked like down there. Mercy, thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, it was happening down at Mar-a-Lago, and you can tell that there's the jockeying for the jobs and, who's in, who's out. So it's kind of interesting to watch, and I could tell with the president, he's very focused. He wants people's opinions on, he asked our opinions about certain appointments, and so it's really interesting to see that he's razor focused on getting his really talented team assembled quickly.
Well, and I'm sure on many people's lists is our next guest, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares. He is obviously a rising star, as they say, not just in the Republican Party, but really just in our nation with regard to understanding the law and utilizing his position as Attorney General of Virginia to fight for the legal rights of the citizens of the Commonwealth, but also to bring law and order back and to sort of put the bad guys behind bars. And that's why, Mr. Attorney General, many of us were really happy to hear that you are running for re-election and you want to give 4 more years to Virginians. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you all. Thanks so much for having me.
I know you told our colleague Vince Colonnese earlier in the week that you did very seriously consider running for governor, and I'd love for you to sort of repeat for everyone listening why 4 more years as Attorney General really was hard for you to pass up, especially considering your colleague, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, has thrown her hat into the ring, and I know that both of you are committed to continuing the good work that Governor Youngkin has already done for the beginning of his term.
Well, Winsome's a great friend, but listen, I mean, when I stood and took my oath of office, I made one promise to the people of Virginia 3 years ago, which is to keep you and your family safe. That was my number one goal, and to show the Wayback Machine for your listeners where Virginia was when we took office. When we took office, Virginia had a 20-year high in the murder rate. When we took office, we had record levels of addiction deaths. We had seen a just dispirited, discouraged group of our law enforcement heroes who felt like nobody in Richmond had their back. And we went about really having this mindset of, and some of it's just common sense, but as we know in Washington, and unfortunately sometimes in Richmond, common sense is very common, standing with law enforcement instead of standing against them, going after repeat violent offenders. And that's exactly what we did when you looked at these levels of just pain that was happening in these communities. And so, we launched Operation Ceasefire because I'm a big believer. If you can measure it, you can improve it. And so not only did I get feedback from law enforcement, but I wanted to basically, how are we going to measure success? We had metrics in our office. But the reality is, if you want to lower violent crime, you have to go after that small subset of repeat violent offenders, right? Roughly 5% of felons are committing over 50% of the violent felonies. If you want to lower crime, you have to have the will to go after, and that's exactly what we did with Operation Ceasefire with our 13 targeted cities. We've seen overall, after having a 20-year high in the murder rate, a decades-high level of violent crime that was unacceptable. We saw a 30% drop in violent crime. We've seen, for the first time, a drop in our addiction deaths. We're very proud of our One Pill Could Kill campaign and going after not just dealers, but getting the right information. So incredibly proud of the work we've done, but I could tell you this. We cannot go to the far left policies that we've had in Virginia in the past where, our law enforcement heroes were reviled and you had this criminal first, victim last mindset. So incredibly proud of the work that we've done. We like to say that we're the people's protector, and we're proud to be protecting Virginians every day.
Well, I know you addressed this week was at Norfolk State University on this issue of human trafficking, where you all talked about the importance of the National Child ID to support victim-centered solutions. I mean, for us at CPAC, we have our Center for Combating Human Trafficking doing a ton of work in this area. What can we do as we've seen, we've had these criminals here in Virginia where there's in a situation where there are these child trafficking situations. How can you best handle this? What do we need to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud to partner with the great Washington Redskins, Charles Mann, on that. It was a great event at Norfolk State talking about this and the idea of giving parents these tools if the worst thing happens for a parent, their child is abducted. But I mean, listen, it just goes to show that how much of what we're dealing with in Virginia is in some ways related to the crisis we have at the border. As we know, during the Biden and Harris regime, they've had over 8 million, that's being a conservative estimate, 8 million illegal crossings on our southern border. That's larger than the population of 32 U.S. states. It's the largest level of human migration into this country in our nation's history. The cartels control everything on the border. I went down the Senate went down to El Paso, was able to be right across the way from Miyares, get briefings from federal and state authorities on what was happening. It's clear to me that the Sinaloa cartel is the most dangerous criminal enterprise on the planet. They make the Italian mafia look like the Boy Scouts, and they're trafficking not just in narcotics but human beings. And you can read the transcripts of some of these. Some of their discussion, and it's really remarkable to see. They do a synthetic opioid or they're pushing heroin. That's a one-time revenue stream. They view human beings as commodities, whether it's sex or labor trafficking. And that is the definition of evil because it robs you of your dignity. It really treats a human being just like they're just some commodity to be bought and trade. I can think of few things more evil than that. Wow. And these human traffickers. So getting control of our border is going to help us as well, not just in Virginia, but truly every state's a border state. And if you think about it, then you have the Biden administration just losing tens of thousands of migrant children. They just dropped them off in Spotsylvania, dropped them off in other areas, even in Virginia. We were never even notified. And we repeatedly sent letters to the Homeland Security director to just tell us, where are these kids that you dropped off, these unaccompanied minors? Guess what? They don't know where they are. They won't ever respond to us. That should show you how little the Biden-Harris administration has cared about protecting not just Virginians but Americans. And so it's a huge issue. Human trafficking is the world's second largest criminal enterprise. I really applaud CPAC for focusing and being willing to talk about it. There's a lot of groups that haven't, not realizing how prevalent it is.
Well, the other end of this horrific story having to do with the border security and immigration policy has to do with the criminals who are allowed in. And one of them, Dennis Humberto Navarrete Romero, was just arrested in Herndon, here in Fairfax County, a sanctuary county, by the way, where the police and law enforcement are forbidden to work with ICE. This person was just arrested for multiple rapes of women on a hiking trail in Fairfax County. And as Attorney General, I know, as you said, you've sworn to keep the people of Virginia safe. What can you do to apply pressure on the county? Can they legally decide on their own without the state's permission, without your permission? Can they just legally decide that they're not going to cooperate with federal law enforcement officials with regard to these criminal illegal immigrants?
Every time that we have tried to pass a law requiring localities to cooperate with federal authorities, every time Democrats voted down. Every time in Richmond. It is something that Governor Youngkin's brought up. There are some different ideas that we're looking at as well. But time and time again, I saw this firsthand. I went because I'm a big believer. Go out in the field, talk to the people actually on the ground. Do not be siloed in your office, whether it's in Richmond or Washington. I'm a big believer in leadership by walking around, leadership by actually talking to people doing the job. I did a ride along with ICE on a fugitive takedown. It was the most infuriating thing to see. It was 3 individuals that, because the local sheriffs would not they were either ordered by their local board of supervisors or they made a policy decision because of politics over safety. We had an individual that was an MS-13 affiliated individual that had crossed our border, been released by the Biden administration, MS-13 affiliated, had been indicted on a rape charge. So he's indicted on a rape charge here in Northern Virginia. A liberal judge decided to give this person bond, which that alone is a whole separate discussion how that happened. And then the sheriff simply never notified ICE that this person that was a wanted rapist was walking out of their jail. Never notified ICE. They had to track this person down, do a surveillance, try to ascertain when was the best time to actually do the arrest. Guess what happened? We were sitting outside his apartment at 4:30 a.m. in the morning waiting for this individual to leave because he had a time he was going to work. And was delayed. A school bus comes around later. He left later than we thought. This individual immediately ran when the apprehension started to go down, was running through the back of people's yards. Thank goodness he wasn't armed. It took them 96 hours to try to track this individual down. All of that could have been with a 12-man team. Another individual was a weapons charge. Another individual was a narcotics possession with intent to distribute charge. All of these were people here illegally that have been picked up on domestic charges of either weapons, drug dealing, or rape, and all of them the local authorities want to cooperate. And so that will not change until we either change the law in Richmond and we actually have a few common sense Democrats that will realize that this is simply your first duty as a public servant is to keep your constituents safe. That's the opposite of that. Or candidly, local government and local sheriffs start paying a political price for it by their constituents.
I humbly suggest that all of those Republicans who are running for office coming up next November for seats in the Senate and in the House of Delegates, they might want to talk about this issue quite a bit between now and then, because I think the people of Virginia will respond properly at the ballot box. Jason Miyares, Attorney General of Virginia, thank you so much for joining us.
By the way,
sir.
As a Cuban, so proud of the work that Jason Miyares
I knew
does.
the Cuban fraternity was going to pop in
I
here.
know.
I know
Sorry,
you
Larry,
too.
you can't share in that.
Yeah.
It's just unique to Jason and I
yes,
and Marco.
It is
and
unique.
Marco Rubio.
And if we don't talk before, then have a blessed Noche Buena, all right? And if we don't talk before Christmas. But,
Noche Buena, yes. With a lot of with the pig, with the roasted pig, yes, absolutely.
And we
Larry,
in my house we have black beans and rice for part of our Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh,
so
we do
kind of
too.
Cubanize. Yeah, see,
yeah.
Don't knock
Sorry,
it till you
Larry.
try it. For anybody who doesn't understand it,
I'm
Larry,
not.
you
You're making me hungry. I'm fine with all of
right.
that. Thank you, guys.
You're on the carnivore diet. You can't eat the rice and black beans.
No, I can't.
Larry. Not
It's
happening.
8:48 now. Let's get to Jamie Whitten.